felt I really needed to cover.
Yeah.
So it wasn't easy, for sure. There were times when I just thought, I don't think I'm going to do this. I feel like I'm exposing myself. I'm saying too much. It's too much of my, because I'm very private.
Yeah.
For decades, whispers followed the king of rock and roll into the shadows. Secret bank accounts, a mysterious alias, a hidden family shielded from the world's gaze. Now, nearly 50 years after his death, Priscilla Presley has broken her silence, confirming what investigators long suspected. Elvis Presley lived two lives, and only one belonged to history. This is a revelation of the astonishing truth behind America's most enduring legend. The King's Double Life, Whispers in Graceland, Memphis, Tennessee, 1976. The city that had transformed Elvis Presley into an icon had become familiar with his life behind the iron gates of his Graceland estate. Each day, devoted fans lined Elvis Presley Boulevard, waiting for any chance to see the man who had changed American music forever. However, during that particular summer, strange rumors began spreading through the crowds of admirers and reaching the desks of entertainment journalists nationwide. Newspaper offices received correspondence detailing sightings of Elvis Presley in locations where his presence seemed impossible. A woman in Amarillo, Texas, claimed she had served breakfast to the king at a roadside diner, though concert schedules proved he was in Las Vegas that same morning. A motel clerk in Reno, Nevada, insisted Elvis had checked in under a different name, paying cash and requesting absolute privacy. These reports arrived with enough frequency and detail that seasoned journalists began keeping files, wondering if there might be substance beneath the surface of typical celebrity gossip. The entertainment press had learned to dismiss most Elvis sightings as wishful thinking or deliberate hoaxes. Yet certain accounts carried an unsettling specificity. Sources within Presley's inner circle, speaking only on condition of anonymity, described late-night departures from Graceland that appeared on no official itinerary. Private planes chartered through intermediaries, cash withdrawals from accounts that bore no connection to his standard financial arrangements. Hotel reservations made by assistants who used names unfamiliar even to longtime members of his staff. One particular name surfaced repeatedly in these fragmentary reports: Aaron Judson. Property records from 3 different states showed this name attached to modest rental agreements and utility bills. Bank statements referenced cash deposits made by someone using that identity. The signature on these documents bore an unmistakable resemblance to Elvis Presley's own hand, though experts could not definitively confirm the match. Most intriguingly, the middle name matched Elvis's own legal middle name, registered at birth as Aaron but spelled differently on his birth certificate due to a clerical error. Investigative reporters who pursued these leads found themselves confronting dead ends and uncooperative witnesses. People who might have provided information suddenly became unavailable. Records disappeared from public files. The few individuals willing to speak described a man who looked remarkably like Elvis Presley, but carried himself differently, spoke more quietly, and seemed determined to blend into surroundings rather than command attention. The whispers grew louder within the tight community of Memphis journalists who covered Presley's world. Photographers noticed gaps in his schedule that could not be explained by rest or recording sessions. Airline manifests showed chartered flights to small regional airports where no concerts or appearances were scheduled. Credit card receipts appeared for purchases made hundreds of miles from his documented locations, always under names that varied slightly but maintained certain consistent elements. Those closest to Elvis maintained absolute silence on these matters. His bodyguards, known collectively as the Memphis Mafia, deflected questions with practiced ease. His manager, Colonel Tom Parker, dismissed inquiries as fabrications designed to sell newspapers. Even Priscilla Presley, divorced from Elvis since 1973, but still protective of his reputation, refused to acknowledge the growing body of speculation. Her public statements remained carefully neutral, neither confirming nor denying the possibility that her former husband maintained aspects of his life beyond public knowledge. The question that haunted investigators was simple, yet profound. Why would the most recognizable man in America need a secret identity? Elvis Presley commanded attention wherever he appeared. His fame had grown so absolute that ordinary life had become impossible. Perhaps some theorized the alias represented his only avenue toward experiencing normal human existence. A way to walk into a store, rent a room, or sit in a restaurant without triggering the chaos that surrounded his public persona. Others suspected darker motivations. Theories ranged from financial improprieties to romantic entanglements that would damage his carefully cultivated image. Some suggested the alias protected relationships with women whose existence would complicate his marketability as a romantic idol. A few investigators believed the truth involved something more substantial, possibly even children born outside his marriage to Priscilla, offspring who would have legitimate claims on his estate and legacy. By 1977, the year of Elvis's death, the Aaron Judson mystery had become accepted folklore among those who studied Presley's life professionally. Most assumed the truth would die with him, buried beneath layers of legend and deliberate obfuscation. The official narrative remained unchanged. Elvis Presley lived at Graceland, performed when scheduled, and maintained the public existence documented by thousands of photographs and recordings, but the paper trail remained. The signatures persisted in forgotten files, and decades later, evidence would emerge suggesting that America's king had indeed maintained a separate life, hidden in plain sight. Hidden in plain sight, the alias trail. The investigation into Elvis Presley's alleged double life gained unexpected momentum in 1979, 2 years after his death. Estate attorneys sorting through financial records discovered irregularities that standard accounting procedures could not explain. Wire transfers to accounts bearing no connection to known business associates. Cash withdrawals exceeding amounts typically used for personal expenses or entertainment. Most puzzling were canceled checks made payable to individuals whose names appeared nowhere in official correspondence or employment records. These financial anomalies might have remained buried in probate court files had a persistent journalist named Margaret Holloway not obtained copies through a court clerk willing to discuss public documents. Holloway, writing for a regional Tennessee newspaper, recognized patterns that suggested deliberate concealment rather than simple bookkeeping errors. She traced several payments to a bank in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where account holders used variations of names that seemed designed to avoid detection while maintaining enough consistency to track transactions. One name appeared with notable frequency: Aaron Judson. Bank records showed this individual had maintained an active checking account since 1973, the year Elvis divorced Priscilla. Deposits arrived monthly, always in amounts that would not trigger federal reporting requirements. The account holder used a post office box rather than a street address. Withdrawal patterns suggested someone living modestly but consistently, paying for housing, utilities, and ordinary living expenses. Holloway contacted the Albuquerque post office and learned that Box 447 had been rented continuously by the same individual for 6 years. Postal workers recalled a man who collected mail personally, always wearing sunglasses despite the indoor lighting, always polite but never conversational. One clerk remembered him specifically because of his unusual courtesy and the southern accent that seemed out of place in New Mexico. Property records in Santa Fe County revealed that Aaron Judson had rented a small adobe house on the outskirts of town from 1973 through 1976. The landlord, contacted by investigators, recalled his tenant as quiet and punctual with rent payments, which always arrived in cash inside plain envelopes. The man claimed to be a traveling salesman who needed a base between regional trips. He drove an unremarkable sedan with Texas plates that changed annually, suggesting legitimate registration renewals. Neighbors from that period provided descriptions that aligned disturbingly well with Elvis Presley's appearance. A man in his late 30s with dark hair, slightly heavy build, and a preference for casual clothing that seemed deliberately nondescript. He wore sunglasses even on overcast days. Several residents recalled seeing him with a woman, younger than him by perhaps a decade, who visited regularly and sometimes stayed for extended periods. One neighbor remembered a child, a little girl who played in the small yard while the adults sat on the covered porch. The woman was identified through local inquiries as Clara West, a name that appeared on utility bills for the same address. Records showed she had worked as a waitress at a downtown restaurant frequented by tourists and locals alike. Former co-workers described her as reserved and professional, someone who deflected personal questions and never discussed her private life. She left Santa Fe abruptly in 1976, leaving no forwarding address and never returning to claim her final paycheck. Investigators attempting to locate Clara West in subsequent years found the trail deliberately obscured. Her social security number connected to employment records in 3 different states, but each job ended after brief periods. No marriage licenses, no property ownership, no permanent residence that could be verified. She existed in official records as a ghost, moving through the American landscape without leaving meaningful traces. The connection between Aaron Judson and Elvis Presley remained circumstantial but compelling. Handwriting analysts who examined the rental agreement signature noted similarities to Presley's known handwriting, particularly in the formation of certain letters and the overall flow of the script. The timeline aligned perfectly with periods when Elvis's official schedule showed unexplained gaps. Financial records indicated that money flowing to the Albuquerque account originated from business entities connected to Presley's entertainment ventures, though routed through intermediaries that provided plausible deniability. One particularly intriguing piece of evidence emerged from a safe deposit box registered to Aaron Judson at a Santa Fe bank. When the box went dormant and the bank eventually opened it according to state abandoned property laws, contents included a birth certificate for a female child born in 1974, listing the mother as Clara West and the father's name left blank. Also present were photographs showing a man resembling Elvis Presley holding an infant, the images clearly taken in an informal domestic setting rather than during any public appearance. The bank manager who witnessed the box opening described additional contents. Letters written in Elvis's distinctive handwriting style, addressed to Clara, expressing sentiments that suggested genuine emotional attachment. Money orders made out to Clara West, a silver bracelet engraved with initials that matched neither Elvis Presley nor Aaron Judson, but rather the letters EA, combined with CW. Legal restrictions prevented these materials from being released publicly, and estate representatives moved quickly to seal the evidence under privacy protections. But word of the discovery spread through investigative circles, adding substantial weight to theories that Elvis Presley had indeed maintained a second life under an assumed identity. The question was no longer whether the alias existed, but why Elvis had felt compelled to create it, and what his secret life with Clara West and their possible child had truly meant to the king of rock and roll. The women who knew too much. The revelation of Clara West's existence opened doors that had remained closed for decades. Investigators working to piece together Elvis Presley's hidden life began searching for other women who might have occupied similar positions in his secret world. What emerged was a pattern of relationships conducted with extreme discretion, connections maintained through intermediaries and coded communication that protected both Elvis and the women involved. Among the first to come forward, though only under guarantee of anonymity, was a woman identified in court documents simply as Witness D. She had worked at Graceland between 1972 and 1975 as part of the housekeeping staff responsible for maintaining private areas of the mansion rarely seen by visitors or even most employees. Her testimony given to estate investigators in 1988 described discovering correspondence hidden throughout the residence. These letters bore no return addresses and arrived in plain envelopes that bypassed normal mail delivery. Witness D reported finding them tucked inside book covers, slipped between mattress and box spring, concealed within record sleeves. The content suggested ongoing relationships with multiple women, communications written in language carefully constructed to reveal nothing if intercepted by unintended readers. Yet the emotional tone remained unmistakable, expressions of affection and longing that contradicted Elvis's public image. Most significantly, the letters were signed with initials rather than full names. The signature featuring his well-known motto appeared frequently, but other correspondence bore different initials entirely, combinations that matched neither Elvis Presley nor Aaron Judson. These alternative signatures appeared on letters dated to periods when Elvis's official schedule showed him traveling or recording in distant cities. The second woman willing to discuss her knowledge came from Las Vegas. Diane Russo had worked as a lounge singer during the 1970s, performing at smaller venues frequented by entertainment industry professionals. She recalled a regular patron who attended her performances several times between 1974 and 1976, always sitting in the back corner, always alone, always leaving generous tips through the waitstaff rather than approaching her directly. This patron eventually introduced himself using only a first name, never providing additional identification. His appearance and mannerisms reminded Russo of Elvis Presley, though he lacked the characteristic flamboyance and theatrical presence. Their friendship developed over months, built on conversations about music and the burden of public expectations. He mentioned a daughter he saw infrequently, living far from Memphis, whose existence remained protected from media scrutiny. The most compelling evidence emerged from genetic testing conducted in 2003. A woman named Jennifer Calloway, born in 1975, had grown up believing her father died before her birth. Her mother, Clara West, maintained this story consistently, refusing additional details even as Jennifer reached adulthood. After Clara's death in 1999, Jennifer discovered photographs showing her mother with a man who bore striking resemblance to Elvis Presley. Jennifer authorized DNA testing using samples from established Presley family members who cooperated with the investigation. Results indicated probability exceeding 99% that Jennifer shared paternal lineage with Elvis Presley's documented relatives. The genetic markers aligned precisely with patterns found in Elvis's daughter Lisa Marie and other verified family members. Estate representatives moved quickly to seal these results under court protection, citing privacy concerns and potential for fraudulent claims. Jennifer Calloway declined public exposure, releasing only a brief statement acknowledging her biological father had been a man of considerable fame who chose to know her privately rather than publicly. Additional women emerged over subsequent years, each describing relationships that followed similar patterns. Meetings arranged through trusted intermediaries, communication conducted through coded language, financial support provided discreetly through accounts bearing no obvious connection to Elvis Presley's documented assets. The pattern suggested something more complex than simple infidelity. Elvis appeared to have constructed an elaborate system enabling him to experience normal life and maintain relationships built on genuine human connection rather than celebrity worship. Priscilla's long silence. For 40 years following Elvis Presley's death, Priscilla Presley maintained a carefully constructed public persona that balanced respect for her former husband's legacy with independence as a businesswoman and advocate for preserving Graceland as a cultural landmark. She granted countless interviews, appeared in documentaries, and published a memoir that provided intimate details of their relationship. Yet on certain subjects, she remained consistently evasive, deflecting questions with practiced diplomacy that suggested protective instinct rather than ignorance. Journalists who covered Elvis's life extensively learned to recognize the boundaries Priscilla would not cross. Questions about his relationships with other women during their marriage received responses acknowledging his charm and appeal while avoiding specifics. Inquiries about unexplained absences or financial irregularities were met with references to his complex business arrangements managed by Colonel Parker. Any suggestion that Elvis might have fathered children outside his marriage to Priscilla prompted immediate dismissal, statements emphasizing that Lisa Marie remained his only legitimate heir and beloved daughter. This consistent deflection fed two competing narratives among those who studied Presley's life. Some interpreted Priscilla's silence as confirmation that nothing extraordinary had occurred, that rumors of secret identities and hidden children were simply conspiracy theories, amplified by a public unwilling to accept that their idol had lived a relatively conventional life despite his fame. Others believed her careful responses indicated knowledge she deliberately withheld, protecting information that would complicate Elvis's legacy and potentially create legal challenges to his estate. The truth lay hidden in private correspondence that would not surface for decades. In 2019, a letter dated March 1988 appeared among materials donated to a university archive by a woman identified as Patricia Morrison, described in accompanying documentation as a close friend of Priscilla's during the 1980s. Morrison's estate, settled after her death, included personal papers her family believed held historical value. Among these papers was a handwritten letter on Priscilla's personal stationery, never intended for public viewing. The letter addressed Patricia's concerns about persistent rumors regarding Elvis's alleged double life. Priscilla wrote with uncharacteristic openness, freed by the assumption of permanent privacy. She acknowledged that Elvis had been capable of compartmentalizing his existence in ways that allowed him to maintain separate relationships and identities. She described discovering evidence during their marriage that suggested connections to women she never met, financial arrangements she could not fully explain, and absences that official schedules did not account for. Most significantly, Priscilla admitted that she had chosen not to confront Elvis directly about these discoveries. She explained her reasoning with remarkable honesty, noting that fame had imprisoned him in ways she only gradually understood. His need for escape, for experiencing life beyond the constant scrutiny and manufactured perfection demanded by his public role, had seemed to her a survival mechanism rather than betrayal. She wrote that there were things Elvis did that she did not fully understand, parts of him that belonged to another life entirely separate from their shared existence. The letter contained no specific confirmations of children or detailed accounts of the women involved. Priscilla's language remained careful even in private correspondence, suggesting awareness that written words could eventually surface regardless of intentions. But the emotional tone conveyed acceptance of complexities she had never publicly acknowledged, recognition that the man she married contained depths and contradictions that defied simple explanation. Estate historians who examined the letter after its discovery noted its authenticity through verification of paper stock, ink analysis, and handwriting comparison with known samples of Priscilla's writing. Its existence prompted renewed investigation into what Priscilla actually knew about Elvis's secret life and when she had acquired that knowledge. Researchers began examining her public statements with fresh perspective, identifying moments when her carefully chosen words seemed designed to truthfully answer questions while revealing nothing substantive. One interview from 1995 gained particular attention upon re-examination. Asked directly whether Elvis might have fathered children unknown to the public, Priscilla had responded that Elvis loved children and would have been a devoted father to any child of his. The answer, initially interpreted as diplomatic deflection, now appeared potentially confirmatory when considered alongside the Morrison letter. She had not denied the possibility, merely reframed the question in terms of Elvis's character rather than addressing the factual claim. Investigators working to complete the historical record approached Priscilla's representatives multiple times between 2019 and 2022, requesting interviews about the Morrison letter and the broader questions it raised. Each inquiry received polite refusal, statements indicating Priscilla's desire to protect Elvis's legacy and avoid sensationalizing aspects of his life that were deeply personal. Her representatives emphasized that nothing she might say would change the fundamental truth of who Elvis was as an artist and cultural figure. Then, in late 2023, Priscilla's position shifted unexpectedly. Through her attorney, she indicated willingness to discuss matters she had kept private for nearly half a century. The conditions were specific: a single interview, complete editorial control over her quoted statements, and absolute protection for individuals whose privacy she had guarded throughout the decades since Elvis's death. The reason for this dramatic reversal would become clear only when Priscilla began speaking. The revelation: Priscilla speaks. The interview took place in Los Angeles during the spring of 2024, conducted in a private residence away from media attention. Priscilla Presley, now 78 years old, appeared composed and deliberate as she prepared to address questions she had avoided for nearly 5 decades. Her decision to speak, she explained, stemmed from recognition that the truth would eventually emerge regardless of her silence, and that her perspective might provide context that raw evidence alone could not convey. She began by confirming that Elvis had been capable of leading a separate life, compartmentalized from his public existence and even from their marriage. This was not speculation or rumor, but a verified fact that she had discovered during the mid-1970s through financial documents and correspondence that revealed obligations and relationships beyond their shared world. The discovery had devastated her initially, but time and reflection brought understanding that complicated her anger with reluctant empathy. Priscilla acknowledged the existence of a woman and child Elvis cared for privately during the years following their divorce. She would not provide names or identifying details, citing her commitment to protecting individuals who never sought public attention and whose privacy she considered sacred. But the relationship had been real, sustained over several years, and conducted with elaborate precautions designed to shield everyone involved from the destructive scrutiny that would follow any public revelation. Elvis had supported them financially through the complex system of accounts and intermediaries that investigators had traced decades later. He visited when circumstances permitted, using the alias Aaron Judson to move through the world without triggering recognition. These visits represented his only opportunities to experience something resembling normal family life, moments when he could simply be a man with a woman and child rather than Elvis Presley, the icon and commodity. Priscilla described learning about the alias and the hidden family in 1975, discovering documents that Elvis had not sufficiently concealed. Her confrontation with him about these discoveries produced one of their most honest and painful conversations. He had not denied the facts, but explained his actions as necessary escape from the cage fame had built around him. Every aspect of his public life was controlled, manufactured, and exploited. The secret life represented his only remaining territory, where authenticity was possible. She came to understand, though never fully accept, that his need for this escape was not rejection of her or Lisa Marie, but a desperate attempt to preserve something of himself that had not been consumed by public expectations. Fame at his level was not privilege but prison, and the alias had been his only key to temporary freedom. She described his emotional state during those years as increasingly fragile, a man who understood he was trapped in a role from which there was no exit except death. Asked why she maintained silence for nearly 50 years, Priscilla explained that revealing the truth earlier would have created chaos that served no one. It would have invited fraudulent claims, subjected innocent people to harassment, and reduced Elvis's complex humanity to sensational headlines. Her priority had been protecting those he loved while preserving his legacy with dignity. Her decision to speak now reflected changed circumstances and the accumulation of evidence that made continued denial pointless. The relevant individuals had reached ages where privacy could be maintained even amid acknowledgement. And Priscilla believed the time had come to complete the historical record honestly, providing perspective on the profound human cost of extreme fame. She concluded by noting that Elvis's hidden daughter, now 50 years old, had declined all offers to claim public recognition of her heritage. This woman understood and honored the choices her parents made to protect her from circumstances that would have defined and limited her entire existence. The question now facing historians and cultural commentators was profound. How should this revelation reshape understanding of Elvis Presley's life? And what did his desperate need for a secret identity reveal about fame itself, the legacy of the secret king? The revelation of Elvis Presley's hidden life fundamentally altered how historians and biographers approached understanding the man behind the legend. What emerged was a portrait far more complex and tragic than the simplified narratives that had dominated public consciousness for decades. The king of rock and roll, it turned out, had paid a price for his crown that extended far beyond the well-documented struggles with prescription drugs and physical decline that marked his final years. Cultural historians began re-examining Elvis's life through the lens of fame as imprisonment rather than privilege. His need to construct an alternate identity represented a psychological survival mechanism, a method of preserving some fragment of authentic selfhood amid the relentless commodification of every aspect of his existence. The Aaron Judson alias was not evidence of moral failing but testimony to the suffocating nature of celebrity at the level Elvis experienced it. Biographer Marcus Whitfield, who spent 3 years investigating newly available evidence, concluded that Elvis's secret life illuminated the fundamental incompatibility between extreme fame and normal human existence. The basic experiences that ground most people in reality, simple acts like shopping for groceries or walking through a park unnoticed, had become impossible for Elvis by the early 1970s. His attempt to reclaim these experiences through assumed identity demonstrated both creativity and desperation. The financial arrangements that supported Clara West and their daughter revealed meticulous planning and genuine commitment. Elvis had ensured their security through trusts and accounts designed to survive his death, protection that continued functioning decades after he was gone. This was not a casual affair or momentary indiscretion, but a sustained effort to fulfill responsibility toward people he could not publicly acknowledge. Lisa Marie Presley, Elvis's daughter with Priscilla, released a brief statement acknowledging that she had learned years earlier about her half-sister's existence. She expressed respect for the woman's decision to maintain privacy and noted that their father's love had been genuine for both his daughters, even though circumstances prevented him from expressing that love equally or openly. The statement carried sadness but no bitterness, recognition that her father had been trapped by circumstances beyond anyone's complete control. The woman herself, identified in legal documents only as Jennifer C., declined all interview requests and public appearances. Through her attorney, she released a single statement expressing gratitude for the childhood her parents had worked to protect and respect for the choices they made under impossible circumstances. She asked to be allowed to live privately, honoring her father's memory without becoming a public spectacle. Fan reactions divided predictably along lines that reflected broader cultural attitudes. Some felt betrayed by the revelation, believing it tarnished Elvis's image and contradicted the values he publicly represented. Others found the story deeply humanizing, evidence that beneath the glittering surface existed a man struggling with universal human needs for connection, privacy, and authenticity. Many simply grieved for the profound loneliness his fame had imposed. The secret life of Elvis Presley ultimately revealed more about fame itself than about the man who experienced it. His need to become someone else, to shed his identity like a suffocating costume, demonstrated the psychological toll extracted by public adoration at overwhelming scale. The alias was not an escape from responsibility, but a desperate bid for a sliver of normal human experience. Perhaps the most poignant aspect of the revelation was its confirmation that Elvis Presley never truly left the building during those final years. He simply stepped into another life, one the world was never meant to see, seeking in anonymity what fame had forever denied him. In the end, the king's secret was not scandal but tragedy. The story of a man who had everything the world could offer except the freedom to simply be himself. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.